Alright guys, today we'll watch a new video by Indie Game Clinic, and today we'll talk about game balance or some game design principles.
Crit Crow says, what's the best approach to starting to balance a deck builder when the core concept is fairly unique, so nothing to reference as a starting point?
Ooh, alright, okay. So if we divided this actually to certain points that have a very critical main problems. When the core concept is fairly unique, so nothing to reference as this is wrong. Again, if you want to make something unique, you cannot make it from scratch because you're gonna need to reinvent the universe just to make something so unique that it has no references. When you do a deck builder that is fairly unique, so nothing to reference as
The starting point.
a starting point for the game, this means, by the way, again, as we said multiple times, bad pre-production. You cannot understand the game concepts from the start and then just go build your game without a pre-production plan for the game design principles that are gonna be in your video game. So you facing this problem mid-production means you had a very bad game design principles and very bad pre-production, and sometimes, as people do, neglect it at all.
Firstly, this question, red flags all over, alarm bells. And that is because although I like games to be unique, and I'm always encouraging people to try and make unique games,
Uniqueness comes from narrative design and game design principle. It does not come from merging fucking 5 genres into one game and thinking it's gonna be unique. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that this specific project had this, but it's what people do and confuse doing. Like, they come to me, I want to make a roguelike MMORPG game with open world fucking I don't know the platformer game, and then come to me and tell me why my game went bad yet it has so unique ideas that never been in the market. I would tell you that it was not in the market in the first place for a reason.
even if it makes the game dev bros show up on my channel and go,
Oh, you're such a hipster. Why do you want people to not just clone things?
I do think that when someone frames their problem in this way, like, oh, my thing is so unique, oh, how am I going to cope? It's too unique. It maybe feels like it points towards one of two problems. The first problem is that the idea is not actually that unique and the person just hasn't played many games, which is a game design cardinal sin.
As we said before, many people don't do it. Many people think it's stupid. Again, it's a very good description. Cardinal sin in game design principle that you do not brainstorm or play games in the genre before producing your own game in the same genre. You want to play, you want to make a platformer game that has some good, decent narrative design. Let's say a platform game where you like discover different islands. So you go play 3, 4, 5, even 6 good platformer 2D games, maybe even one shitty one, just to understand what to do right and what to do wrong and what not to do because it's wrong, and then go for the narrative design, see something similar. Like if it was like different unique islands narratively designed, go watch One Piece or stuff like that, because this, or maybe Lost, it has that type of weirdness and uniqueness in island designs. So you need to go and brainstorm, you need to play video games to actually make a very good game design.
And the second potential problem is that the game is so unique precisely because it's a combination of things that no one really wants, and that's why no one's done it before. Which
Yeah,
can
again,
happen.
you cannot just merge Coca-Cola with chicken and watermelon and mesh them into one plate and think people just gonna eat it because it's unique. Sometimes it's unique, but people just don't want to try it.
Happen, right? It's like cinnamon spiced hot dogs or something like that.
Oh, we both did a plate example. Damn it!
But let's have a think about this incredibly specific game dev problem, which when I think of it is a stage every game is going to go through. How do you balance the thing? There are lots of kind of sub-questions there of like, when do you balance the thing and how do you balance it, both in terms of like, what do you do for the player experience, but also what do you do in terms of like the data structures in the game and stuff like that to enable you to balance it, right? So if you take the original StarCraft as an example, the lead designer there did all of the balancing just by tweaking and playing and tweaking and playing and tweaking and playing. And I've heard him in an interview, I'll link it below, basically saying, you know, people are really surprised that I didn't have some magic formula to balance the thing. No, it was tweaking and playing and tweaking and playing.
Yeah, because testing and error and testing and fixing the errors is one of the good ways to actually design something unique, because it is a formula in itself. It's like testing and error. If you had an error, fix it, go test again, see what error comes on until you get something decent. There's nothing perfect exactly, but there's something that is decent. So that's what it is in its own a formula of testing.
The only reason he was able to do that is because, you know, Blizzard had created a level editor that was so robust that it was very quick to go in and tweak all these variables and play things over and over again.
If you want to do that, if you want to really change stuff in the production phase, mid-production, post-production, you need to design stuff to be scalable, adjustable, and very optimized, that it could be even very easily modified from inspector and stuff like that. Because if they are like if the speed, for example, of a certain object is a private variable, a private float, and you want to change it mid-production for different types, you want to change different values of different enemies, of different objects, and all of them are set private in the fucking code. Now you need to go to the code and put the new numbers and values and tweak them by code, which is ridiculous. You want to make them and this is a very simple example of it. You need to make everything scalable and adjustable if you want to change stuff mid to post-production.
When it comes to this question of how do you balance a game, whatever kind of game it is, whether it's very unique or a clone of something, wherever it sits on that spectrum, you're going to have a quick way of iterating on the balancing data somehow. This could include things like...
That's why many people talk about scriptable objects, stuff. That's why many people use the audio inspector, because to make things easier, by the way, if you want to use the inspector a lot. That's why many people do even their own level editor to make their own level. So there's different ways and different options just to make it scalable and editable mid to post production. You don't want to waste that time.
Having your balancing in a spreadsheet so that you can import it into the game via a CSV.
Of course, yeah, that's a very good way to do it.
Or something like that. Or it may just be that in your Unity project or wherever you're working, you make sure that the balancing data isn't spread around into a million different game objects, but it's handled in one place. Because if you don't have that in place, but then the main thing that you need to do in order to balance your game, which is to iterate and do loads of little tweaks over and over again,
what will take more time than the production time, and which means your project or either fail or just take 7 fucking years to make a 2D platformer.
Again, is going to be hard.
Or it would be badly game design balanced.
You to do, because you're slowing down your iteration cycle. Now, the other question that you didn't ask, but I think is relevant here, is when is it time to balance? And the kind of metaphor I always use to describe this is putting on a string on a guitar, right? If you've ever strung a guitar,
that's a good example.
When you first put the string on, you make big changes. You turn the knob like 10 times because you're just trying to get the tuning of the string loosely close to what it would be.
An amazingly good example. I 100% agree with it. It's clarified the idea very much. If you want to really do it, and like when you do a guitar, you do 10 very big changes, big moves, then you start to do small moves like 1, 2, 3, but like in more precision. Well, and that's what he is implementing into game design principles. So these small changes that usually comes in mid and post-production. Again, if they were like not very organized, especially for a big team, but the CVS files usually are used for bigger teams. Like the game design principal guy is different from the one that's coding, so he just submit a CVS file that is get implemented into the game engine. But if you are a solo dev and you are doing just the thing, you know your project where your stuff, and you are the game designer and the game developer, so you go and design something. If you have it in multiple codes, in private things, in private scripts, that, and you have 100 scripts and stuff like that, 100 of assembled definitions, and you did not put scalability optimization into perspective, it's gonna suck a lot, especially for commercial games.
Don't put the string on and then make loads of little micro adjustments right at the start, right? That is for when all of the strings are on, they're nearly in the right place in terms of tuning, and then you can start micro tuning them then. And balancing a game is a bit like that, because at the start of the game you don't really know what the game is, right? So you don't really want to be making micro
Again, he's just
tuning.
giving that example that you don't know the game is because many people just have a very bad pre-production plan. Even small teams and mid-sized production, by the way, it's frustrating. And a very big surprise to you guys, there are even AAA industry that neglect pre-production nowadays, and it costs them in the production millions of dollars. We're talking millions, 100 of million, okay, 100 of million, maybe a bit exaggerated, maybe 100 of a million if it's a very big project, and it's not just due to bad pre-production, just a bad pipeline, but we're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about a lot of time spent, people waiting for the game, which means less players, by the way. So it is bad. It's pretty bad. There's something about, but he's talking realistically. Most people just neglect pre-production, unfortunately, for some reason. So if you neglected the pre-production plan and didn't know what your game is, this could help you a lot. But if you did the pre-production plan, as I advise all the time, and then go and do this method, you're gonna have something near perfect, to be honest.
To it, you want to be making big sweeping changes and testing out how they feel. Game designer Sid Meier has the double or halve it rule, which is a similar concept. It's just like when you are getting a feel for what a game is or what it's going to be, you should be making big changes, not little changes. That's a general principle that I think is a good idea to start with. In relation to the specific game we've been asked about, though, what are some general kind of balancing frameworks for card games that exist? In terms of the game we've been asked about today, this deck builder, I would start with card game culture generally and what we can learn from there, because there are terms that exist across lots of different types of card games.
Again, I'm not very professional in game design principles for card games. I maybe even did it twice, yeah. Card games have a different culture from video games. Normal storyline video games, which I am used to like design, they have a very specific, even big people when try to be in card industry, they usually fail because it's really hard to tweak and make actual fun card game like Uno, for example, or Monopoly. If it's it's a board game, not a card game. Yeah, that it could not. Maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the best card games in my opinion. So it's really hard to tweak these stuff, and that's why. And many people think it's very easy. Like look at Trump cards, when Donald Trump wanted to make a business for a card game, and he failed miserably. And the reason is because the players of the card games are wanting to try something not just unique, but something actually different in gameplay wise, and actually balanced, and not just unique, like not just an idea that's unique. They want an idea that's unique, fun to play, and balanced, and easily repeatable, of course. And that's the thing that the very simple bullet points that I noticed in designing a card game. But again, I have a very humble experience in designing card games.
And things like Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, those are not deck builders, they're constructed deck games. The difference is that you don't actually construct the deck while you're playing the game. You do it between matches, and it's part of the game, but it's not part of the gameplay, if that makes sense. From
Right.
Magic the Gathering and Pokemon and stuff like that, we get the concept of aggro versus control, and it's basically like in a sport where you play aggressively or you play defensively. And an aggro deck in a game is about trying to do as much damage as possible as quickly as possible, and a control deck is defending against that and trying to win the game later on. And if you want to abstract it out and not think about damage and combat, then it is about whether your journey towards the win condition is you sprinting or more like a marathon. That's a principle that you could apply to any card game as long as there is a win condition. It can be player versus computer, it can be player versus player, but having these two poles of control and aggro it gives you a starting point for maybe not balancing, but the thing you need to do before balancing, which is actually defining what the strategies in the game are. And then once you've got those, then you can get into balancing. And like I said at the start of this video, the balancing is really a matter of iterating and tweaking and iterating and tweaking. But if
Yeah, that's something to put in mind, I guess, in like deck building games or deck like playing games. So you need to actually design what kind of strategies player gonna do. So you actually need to play the game a lot of times, not like platformers, to be honest, because you need to understand what type of thousands and million opportunities of strategies with different cards. Like when you, for example, play a very simple card game in perspective, for example, is Clash Royale. So when they put different cards, they are usually just from the start of the developing the game, tweaking around and playing the game ton of time just to get the strategies that you could get from cards. And very simple example of it, how the starter deck is very balanced deck, because it means they did not just randomly put cards, but they understood each card how it could work with the game, which is actually a very difficult thing to do and nail in game design principles, in my opinion, because it needs a lot of testing and it would take a lot of time to do.
if you're trying to balance your game and you don't really have those different strategies clearly defined yet, then you're balancing prematurely. Because
Yeah, like it's more complicated than games like Uno, for example, because it's more family friendly. Like it's not a deck builder. I don't understand why it could be very complicated, and I don't really understand why someone wants to do very something unique in such a matter, because it's gonna suck, man. It's just gonna suck. You, especially if you are if you go and ask someone for help, like me, or maybe the indie game clinic, it means that you do not contain or have the very big budget that you think you have. So you do not have a AAA company, so you cannot go and really hire professionals to design your game, which will they go and sit on a table and try to do it, which means doing such a type of a video game and trying to make it so much unique that you are now confused, as you claim, is a very bad decision to start with such a game, because you need a lot of game design principle professionals, especially that it means that from the first statement that he read, it means that he definitely don't understand a lot about how game design principles works. So yeah, I don't really recommend him doing that.
is a game that is symmetrical, where both players can do the same thing, doesn't really need balancing. The only time you need to start thinking about balancing in something like a video game deck builder where the player is playing against the computer is after you've got these different strategies in place and you want to make sure that one of them isn't just always better. Because if you have that situation, then players will just...
Again, they only even nerf cards and nerf stuff in video games even after the game is done, which makes you like, no, even in video games like Elden Ring with thousands of testers, thousands of professionals, sometimes you, even with these types of professionals, it will not just click with the players sometimes. So yeah, there's if you think of that, think of a very long time of post-production. This is a very big cost, by the way. Like, think of a lot of patches, a lot of tweaking. Normal video games have a 1 year of support, usually post-production wise, if it was not a very big title, if it was an indie title, and it was not a very successful one. We're talking mid-success, and they wanted to move on without a DLC or something like that. But in your case, it's gonna be 2.5 to 3 years of post-production.
Always do that thing, and then the strategic element of your game dies because players know that there's a better way to win, and they will just always do that. And all of the creativity that can come from a deck builder, all of the things that people like about deck builders and like about playing them, is now absent from your game, and then you've got a problem. The short answer to the question of how do you balance something is you do it by quick iteration and making lots of little tweaks. And if your game is not set up for that, then you've got an engineering job that you need to do first in order to make it easy.
Again. If you have the project set up wrong, if it's not adjustable only by if I can go to the code and search for a variable from 100 fucking variables and change it, it means that you need to recode stuff, optimize stuff, make things scalable, then go and iterate and test.
Lots of little tweaks. So if you're avoiding doing the iterative
and I don't
approach
understand this thing, by the way. A card game could be reproduced very easily by just paper and scissors and pens, and game design it without developing it first, then just do an electronic version. Just design it as a video game. So you can design it as just a game, even maybe print it, then play it and test it around, then actually make it a video game. I think that's way easier approach of game designing it without spending a penny in producing the game actually in a game engine. So I think that's a very better. You can't do that in platformer. You never can do that in like platformers or many other types of games. So why don't do it in a card game? I don't understand that.
Balancing where you tweak numbers and play and tweak numbers, it's probably because you've got a game project where. But
again, even with the thing I said, you will need to tweak stuff either in patching, or if you wanted to change stuff after mid-production or post-production, you need to make things always scalable, optimized, and easily to modify.
Scattered around the game, and it doesn't make it easy for you to do that. And if that's the case, then you need to fix that. But you also need to understand whether your game is at a stage where it needs to be balanced yet. And in something like a deck builder, I would say that creating the different strategies, creating the different sets of cards that synergize well together
is critical more than balancing in the first place.
Right? Tweaking the costs of things, tweaking how much damage they do, all of that little stuff, that is tuning the guitar string once all of the strings are in place. Just bear with me with this metaphor. You put all of the strings on the guitar, you get them all loosely into place. That is like building your set of cards and your mechanics that players are going to kind of think about, strategize about, try and synergize. And only once you've got that stuff do you need to start worrying about doing the micro tuning on the thing, which is changing the numbers of things and all of that kind of stuff. And in order to do that, you need a tech workflow that makes it very, very quick, whether it's driven by a spreadsheet, pumping a spreadsheet into the game and just changing values on that spreadsheet. That's going to be the quickest way to do it. And if you haven't learned how to do that yet, then maybe that's your next port of call. But I hope you found that useful and interesting. If you haven't found it useful, you haven't found it interesting, I've got good news for you. You're currently using an internet-enabled device, and that means that you've got access to the entire recorded history of human knowledge and experience. And that means
but again, always remember this. I always say that you have internet access, of course you can learn a lot of stuff, but the game industry is a very new industry compared to most of industries in our current world, compared to cinematography, compared to architecture, compared to most of the things. It's a very early industry, so don't be discouraged when you when you thought of something and it's just isn't there. It's either very gatekeeped because it's a very special case scenario and they did not bother to publish it, or it's just not invented yet because again it's a very new industry. Thanks for watching. It's an amazing video by Indie Game Clinic. Definitely go out and watch him. He's one of the most underrated channels in my opinion. Thanks for watching and see you in the next episode.